Howdy, howdy, my strong friends. In this podcast, I interview local and global leaders in health, fitness, business, and government who are actively working to make their communities and the world at large a happier and healthier place to live. For those of you who are back for more, welcome. You are awesome, and thank you for supporting this podcast and channel. And for those of you who are here for the first time, welcome to you too. I hope that you stick around and you get some value out of these conversations. We believe that health, and more specifically, well-being, is the cornerstone of a good life. Our guest today, Dr. Rusty Hoffman, is a board-certified interventional radiologist and entrepreneur in the healthcare and health technology space. He holds many positions that are as listed: the Chief Interventional Radiologist at Stanford University School of Medicine, the Medical Director of Digital Healthcare Intervention at Stanford Healthcare, the Co-Medical Director of the Cardiac and Interventional Radiology Department at Stanford Hospital and Clinics, and the co-founder of Grand Rounds Health, now Included Health, which is a tech-driven healthcare company that offers an employer-based technology alternative for healthcare services. They've recently acquired a telehealth company, Doctor On Demand, and the company is now valued over $1 billion with a B. Rusty has become a friend over the years, and I am excited to share this conversation with you. Please enjoy this conversation with Dr. Rusty Hoffman. Rusty, thanks for being on, man. I've been wanting to have this conversation for 3 years.
I'm excited.
Cool, man. Okay, well, we're going to do an intro. I'll record it later, but I wanted to start with a little icebreaker. So I've heard a lot of interviews that you've done. I watched the TED Med one. I watched the TEDx talk that I think, was it a TEDx or was it a TED, like an official?
TED knows, no, it's a TED Med. It's an official deal.
Yeah. So I listened to that. You did a podcast recently, like last year, but no one has talked about what a favorite surfing trip of yours has been, or a fishing trip. So I wonder if you have an interesting story for either of those.
Yeah. Well, I love the water, so surfing or fishing. I mean, the fishing is probably the most interesting. So I do a lot of fishing for salmon, which is anywhere from 3 to 20 miles offshore, or albacore tuna, which go all the way up to 100 nautical miles offshore. And back when the kids were little, they were about, my 3 boys, 7, 8, and 10. I wanted to go out for albacore fishing. And we were going to leave the dock at 11 in the morning, take 3 hours to get 100 miles offshore, spend the night out there, and then fish in the morning, and then be back at the dock by sunset the following day. So just bobbing in the ocean in 12,000 feet of water. And I knew my wife would be a little bit worried, because I was like, it's me and her 3 boys, her whole life. So I bought this device. It's called an AIS device. It's basically the equivalent of a airplane transponder that tells you where you are and your GPS coordinates, how fast you're going. And it costs like $1,500 to have, but most boats, recreational boats, don't have it, but all like cargo tankers and everything. That's how you track anything on shipping in the world. And so I told Amy, I said, hey, you can just watch this and see what we're doing and see what's going on. And so we left the dock, and we had we spent the night. We had a good time out there. Like blue sharks were circling our boat at night while we're grilling, because they saw the lights. We caught, 20, 25 albacore tuna, and came back in. And as we were coming back in and getting closer to shore, also my cell phone starts just going nuts. And it was my cousin who lives in Palo Alto, who's like my emergency contact if anything would go wrong out at sea. And also my wife. And I'm like, what the heck is going on? And so I called my cousin first, and he's like, yeah, I got this call at midnight from Amy. She was tracking you guys, and then all of a sudden you guys disappeared. She thought you got, like, your boat sank. And so she called me, and I called the Coast Guard, and the Coast Guard was trying to figure out what happened to the party of 5. And they got a hold of one fishing boat that was coming in that we were out of. There was only like 4 of us on the tuna grounds. And they're like, hey, have you seen Party of Five? It's like, yeah, Party of Five was out there. They caught a bunch of fish. They were powered down for the night, so they should be fine. And so I was pretty upset. I'm like, why did my AIS thing not work? And what I didn't understand is actually it's the signal is primarily by line of sight through a VHF antenna. So once you get 12 miles offshore, or depending on how high your antenna is, maybe 20, you actually no longer have line of sight because of the curvature of the earth.
Mm.
So we dropped off and she thought we sunk. So I now tell her we'll be fine. I now have a sat text machine, so I could device that I can text her and tell her we're okay. So caught a lot of fish, scared the hell out of my wife. So that's our surfing or our fishing expedition.
Learn once and adjust, right?
Well, it's also learning when you have technology, what are the limitations? Don't just say, oh yeah, this is going to work wherever. And the reason it works in cargo ships is they're way higher. So their antennas are like a few 100 feet off the ground water line versus mine, which is like 12 feet. And so that's why you can track cargo ships way offshore and not the Party of Five.
Now, is an antenna that high, is it affected by the wind as well? Like,
no,
are they pretty sturdy?
No, they're very sturdy. It can be affected by cloud conditions because actually sometimes the radio waves can bounce off of the clouds in a certain way, and you can get things picked up from really, really far away. Like, I've picked up Santa Barbara before, and that's way farther. Yeah. So, technology is awesome until it's not.
Well, speaking of technology, you have your hands in a lot of different things. And the thing that you had been working on, and I think you can correct me if I'm wrong, but you're not as involved in it as you once were with Grand Rounds, now included health. I think we had talked about a few months ago. How is that progressing? Is that still just mainly with employers? Is that direct to consumer now, or direct to like patients? And I guess where are you with that? Are you still on the board? Like, what does that look like?
Yeah, so I co-founded a company called Grand Rounds back in 2011, 2012 with my co-founder and CEO, Owen Tripp, with the idea of like trying to fix healthcare in America. And basically what I wanted to do was to replace Rusty's cell phone with something at scale that could help people. And why do I say my cell phone? Well, I'm not on social media because I do not need more people on the planet be able to contact me that know me somehow, somewhere. Because if someone gets sick, whether it's something small or big, they call me because they know I'm actually a relatively well-trained physician. I'll listen and I'll help them figure out, like, do you need to go to the emergency room? Do you need to fly to Stanford for care, or Johns Hopkins, where I used to work? What's this drug mean? Is this rash dangerous? Like all sorts of stuff. As a well-trained physician, you can triage things. Or I need a great breast surgeon in Atlanta, Georgia. Who is that? I just got diagnosed with breast cancer, And so the company basically wanted to help people at this way, but not have, money be the primary impediment. So we go to large self-insured employers like Walmart, Costco, Comcast, Amazon, the largest employers in the country. And we tell them, your people don't know how to actually get good care and get it well and get it in a way that they can understand and that's meaningful to them. So we help them get that care across everything. We answer all clinical questions and actually financial questions related to their healthcare. And so this company has grown over time. And just a year ago, we bought another awesome company called Doctor on Demand, which is a telemedicine company, and then rebranded as Included Health. So after 10 years as a co-founder on the board, with this now becoming this massive couple thousand employee company, I thought it was time, to allow the grown-ups, the businessmen to run this big organization. And then I'm now spending my time both with helping build the digital health strategy for Stanford healthcare system, as well as I'm on, advisor and boards to a number of startups and medical device companies in the space. But still, still connected to Included Health with, meetings, phone calls, with, Owen, who's a dear friend, and the executive team there when they have questions or issues related to kind of the clinical care and how things are delivered. But we have, full-time chief medical officer that handles all that. But it's been amazing. It's been an absolute amazing run.
Yeah, I mean, we've had so many conversations over the past couple of years about grand rounds and now Included. I guess I'll just refer to it as Included Health now. But I was always fascinated with how that was run, because essentially you guys try to connect people with the best possible physician for whatever diagnosis they have, and that's just one of the things that you guys do. And I was wondering, I don't remember if we've talked about this, but do you think that that same thing could be done pairing someone with a physical therapist who is specialized in a certain domain? Because you have like 7 billion data points. I think probably many more than that now, but that helped you to determine who the best physicians were for the job. I wonder if that same thing could be done for therapists. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think, yes, it could be. One of the founding hypotheses or thesis of the company was a couple of things. Number one, expert physicians deliver better care and state-of-the-art care and will give you better outcomes than people that aren't experts in a particular area, number one. And number two, the only people that know who's a good doctor is another good doctor. And so those both hold true to physical therapists, right? There's a lot of heterogeneity in any population of people, right? The joke is, what do you call the person that graduates last at medical school? You call them doctor or her doctor. It's like there's no discriminating way to understand who's a good doctor or not, and same with physical therapists. So, we've been able to demonstrate measurably different outcomes with experts versus non-experts. Like the first, which I think you could also look into with physical therapists. So, like our first product that we built, and the reason we called the company initially Grand Rounds is actually something that happens at all institutions, medical institutions around the world, typically once a week, sometimes once a month, where they have an expert fly in and talk about their research to teach the people in that organization about something new, cutting edge. It stems from back at where it was started at Johns Hopkins in the early 1900s, when they had a patient that they didn't understand what was going on with that patient. The doctor would bring the patient to Grand Rounds. Rounds is normally where you go check on your patients every day, right? Grand Rounds is like you do it once a week or once a month, and all the doctors would show up. And the doctor would say, hey, I have this patient, I don't understand what's going on, and would get the input from all the experts there in the audience. And so that's how Grand Rounds started. So the idea with the first product that we built, the company, was expert opinions. If you get breast cancer in Topeka, Kansas, and you're told you need a mastectomy, it's hard to get an expert opinion because they're just going to send you to another breast cancer doctor that's probably down the road. We would get all the medical records, the imaging, package it together, and send it to one of the top 10 or 20 breast oncologists in the country. They would review it, write up an opinion, and send it back to the patient, addressed to the patient, a written document about what's going on. Imagine that, a written document about your healthcare. You don't get that anywhere else. And it's free to the patient because the employer pays for it. We use the money we get from the employer to pay the expert doctor. And when you did this, the scary part was 2/3 of the time you had a major change in diagnosis or treatment. And that still holds true today. So I tell everyone, if you have cancer, you need surgery, you need an expert opinion from Included Health. Similarly, so we could show these differences, and we could show how patients did better, and we would follow them over time. We showed that you would save anywhere between $8,000 and $10,000 per patient that actually signed up, that actually went through this process. So I think with what you do, Nathan, is that you could do the same thing where you would try and demonstrate that with certain disease states that you can get people back to their level of functioning quicker, faster, cheaper for you versus, and people that are trained like you and think like you than people that don't do it that way or are not as well qualified or detailed oriented.
Sure. Yeah, that's definitely something I've been thinking about quite a bit. Like, how do we actually, and this kind of like goes to one of the first things you said is, how do we actually solve the healthcare crisis in the US, or actually make the system better overall for everybody? So that I kind of want to go into that, maybe starting with the end in mind. But what wouldn't, we only have like 8 minutes to cover this, but what would an ideal American healthcare system look like? What would be how would it function? Broad overview.
Yeah, well, I think like the utopian state is better, quicker, faster, cheaper, right? And across, so like, how do you get there? Well, in order to get there, you need to understand where you are today. So when I raised the money in 2011, 2012 to start the company, basically I pitched and said, hey, guess what? Technology has changed everything. It's from how you find a house to how you find a spouse, right? Like everything, except it hasn't changed healthcare, other than maybe actually made it get more confusing and frustrating, because I have a patient that comes in and says, you put me on rat poison. And I'm like, well, actually, you're right. Coumadin is a blood thinner that is used in massive doses as rat poison, but it prevents you from getting blood clots and dying. That's why you're on it, because you had a blood clot. And so I have to like unwind all this spin up because they read it on some blog of somebody that's like not in the medical profession. They might be, pick your job that's not medical. So our healthcare system is basically, the pillar of it is 1930s, family doctor, takes care of everything, writes it on a piece of paper, puts it in a chart, and sticks it in a file cabinet in their office. And then imagine in the 90s and 80s and 90s, all of a sudden you have the ability to look inside people without cutting them open with CAT scans, MRIs, and ultrasounds. Then you have the internet where you can transfer data, images. And so now we have these massive tools. Like back in 1930s, all the doctor had was a stethoscope, an otoscope, and physical exam. Now you have these amazing tools that are all digital. And so it's like, okay, we wipe the slate clean. Let's figure out how we could actually build a health system where you're using this technology efficiently in order to deliver care. And so what has happened, everyone's like, oh, there's electronic medical records. Like, yeah, electronic, I'm giving a talk to the Stanford CEO in 20 minutes on how jacked up medical records are in the United States. They're a great place to store information. They're a terrible place to find information. So what could I tell you? The equivalent of a medical EMR is, think of your iPhoto account that you have on your Mac or your phone. You know the picture's in there. You just have no idea where it is. Like, and you have to scroll. Maybe you type in some rudimentary search function, and then boom, there you find the image. But that's the equivalent of the medical EMR. It's in there. You just have to go dig. So we need to build technology that actually organizes it and then actually serves it up to doctors and patients with actionable items that need to be done now, as opposed to, so they're like more push notifications, as opposed to right now, the way the EMR is, it's pull. You got to go in and pull the data out of the EMR to figure out what needs to be done. So I think we need to really take the technology and actually make it functional, as opposed to, and actionable, as opposed to a place to just store information. Epic, the world's largest EMR, was built really for two reasons. It's built to ensure proper billing and also archive stuff in case there's ever a lawsuit. That's it. It's not built to deliver care. It's not built to learn what works and what doesn't work in certain populations. It's not built to make a doctor's job easier, and it's not built to delight a patient when they interact with it. So to me, those are the things that we need to do, and we have a long way to go, but I'm proud to be part of the team at Stanford that's working on that here, and I'm proud of the team at Included Health for what they're doing.
That's awesome. So in terms of so it sounds like, just so I'm hearing you correctly, a big problem right now is even just being able to access the information in the charts in an efficient manner, and also being reminded of those things. So kind of, I'm thinking of two different softwares that I know of. One is called Searchy.io. It was created by an internet marketer, and he has videos, a bunch of like hundreds and hundreds of videos, like teaching different things. And the problem that he found was that there'd be hundreds of videos, but then but maybe you only need like 2 minutes of something, but there's thousands of hours. Like, how do you find those 2 minutes? And so he had what this software is, it transcribes all of the video text, and then you can just search it in a search bar, and it pulls up that exact moment in that video so that you can look it up. So that's something interesting. And then probably another thing is that, like, I don't know if you've heard of like a CRM, customer relationship management, but something like that, that just like, I don't know how you would do that with HIPAA. That's a big issue, but, or maybe it's not, but that might be something that can send push notifications also.
Well, you're very forward thinking. So Included Health bought a CRM 5 years ago because we knew that was the technology that would help us deliver. And the vendor is, but it is all HIPAA compliant. The vendor is completely HIPAA compliant, number one. Number two, similar to what you talked about, Searchy, there's a startup that I'm working with that's come out of Stanford called Evidently. And it actually uses artificial intelligence to search and index the medical record, kind of like how Google would do it. But it also has another layer on it in terms of displaying information. So it displays the information in a graphic way that makes it easy for a doctor to understand and consume. And then you can double click on those graphs to get all the way down to the original data source to make sure you believe that data source. So there are people that are working on it, and I've seen a lot of people try, but this startup, which I am working with, I'm an advisor to the company, looks the most promising to me so far of the things I've seen.
Cool. Well, I'm glad there's some smart people working on it.
Yeah.
We are at time, Rusty. I know that you gotta get rolling. So thank you for being on today. We have lots more to talk about. I'm sure we can set something up down the road, but thanks again for being on. This was great. Thanks for chatting.
Sure. It was my pleasure.